Well, good evening, IFL Nation, and welcome to tonight's stream. We are back out on the road once again. This time we are at the Supercharged Entertainment Complex, just south of Foxborough, Massachusetts. It is 8:01 p.m. over here on the East Coast. And once again, we are ready for another episode of Wager Wednesday in the Indoor Football League. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy Thursday afternoon and spending a little bit of time with a guy who loves talking indoor football. Really appreciate all of the attention and the interest in the league. Hopefully you're getting as much out of it as I am. For those of you who are new to the league or maybe stumbling upon this channel for the first time on YouTube, I want to warmly welcome you aboard. My name is Alex Schuberth. I am a huge fan of the indoor football game, and that is a passion that I've channeled into my current role as lead IFL contributor for Sports Coast to Coast, which is a Pacific Northwest-based sports forum site which specializes specifically in the coverage of the Indoor Football League and its 14 members currently in the league. Each week, our staff brings you up-to-date team rosters, weekly game previews, recaps of those games once they're all said and done, and we've got a bunch of other content, great analysis of this amazing league. If you call yourself a fan of the IFL, Sports Coast to Coast is a go-to destination to enhance your fandom. I've linked the address to that below in the description. There you will also find the written version of my Wager Wednesday piece, which I put out there yesterday. So if you're not as much of a video person, more like to have the book right in front of you, I've linked that directly below as well. So definitely check it out if you would like. And with that introductory part out of the way, let's move on over to our presentation bit here. Again, we're working off of one screen today, so the transitions might be a little more goosey-loosey than usual, but we'll do what we can with it. Just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen first before I dive in. Good thing I did. All right, here we go. We have entered week 10 of the 2026 season. After this week, by total week count, we will be exactly halfway through the Indoor Football League season. Boy, oh boy, time flies when you're having fun, but the best is yet to come, folks, so stay tuned. All right, so before we get into a week 10 that promises to be one of the most historic weeks in recent memory of the Indoor Football League, we'll take a look at last week. We had 5 games across the week 9 slate, ranging from historic blowouts to a few games that went right down to the very last play. Regardless of which game you were tuned into, there was no shortage of entertainment to be had at every twist and turn. So we will recap each of those 5 games along with our betting results from the week before. Add those to our population of games so far for the season. We'll talk about trends on team and league levels as far as straights, parlays, and our mortal mega bets. We'll look at money lines, spreads, and totals to see what kind of trends are developing there. And we'll see if either of the 2 perfect remaining streaks in the league stay intact when all is said and done. Do the Wranglers get a win this week? Does a Pirates game get held under? We will find out in due time. So once we reflect and recap on everything for week 9, we'll dive into week 10. Full slate, 7 games, all 14 teams in action. We're scattering it out across 4 games, ranging from a Friday standalone game to the doubleheader Monday in New Jersey at American Dream for the IFL Cup. We will preview and predict all 7 of those games, and then we'll cook up a 3-leg parlay in a potential bid for a repeat after we finally got the result that we were seeking a week ago. So we'll dive into that result as well. once we get to that part. All right, so week 9 began with a standalone game in Green Bay. The Blizzard, with their league best 6-1 record, hosting their hated rival, the Quad City Streamwheelers, in the midst of a losing streak and a 2-5 record. Initially in this game, it looked like it was going to be Green Bay just coasting along to victory. They scored the first 16 points of the game. The Blizzard ended up forcing a couple early turnovers on Quad City. But the Steamwheelers, they punched back. They returned the favor with a 15-point run of their own. They got a couple of interceptions off Liam Thompson in the first half after he had thrown just one the entire season up to this point. But ultimately, the momentum of this game was dictated by turnovers. In particular, those going against the Steamwheelers. They had a brutal fumble on a kickoff return in the late stages of the first half. Green Bay converted that into a touchdown. They also had a mishap with two players colliding on receiving a kick return in the fourth quarter. That one was also recovered by Green Bay, as that Blizzard offense under Liam Thompson doing their usual things, as Thompson's looking like a very clear front runner for the league's MVP award so far. The Blizzard defense in general, capitalizing on 5 different Quad City turnovers. They get the job done at home, winning and covering by a final score of 65-40, which puts the Blizzard more than a game ahead of first place in the Eastern Conference. They are now 7-1. Quad City season starting to slip away a little bit from them at 2-6. So we'll have to see if they are able to recover over the next month or so to try to get back into playoff contention. Our first of Saturday's doubleheader was another high-profile Eastern Conference clash, putting the Fishers Freight against the Orlando Pirates at the Kia Center. Now, the Freight here were looking for their first ever win against the Pirates after the then Massachusetts team swept them in the 2 games a season ago. And my, oh my, aside from a couple empty possessions in that first quarter to start, this one was all guns blazing. Orlando, touchdowns on virtually every possession. Fishers getting points on all their possessions as well. And as Orlando was trying to hang on to that one possession lead, it was the kicking ability of Callum Sutherland that completely swung the momentum of the game in the favor of the Fishers Freight, to the point where the Freight had a 1 and a 3-point lead in the late stages of the game. With Fishers ahead by 3 and a minute left to go, the Pirates embarked on their drive in a quest to steal the win. And on the final play of the game, they're set up at Fishers' 2-yard line. They decide to put the ball through the air with Paxton DeLaurent. He throws an absolute seed to Tio Redding in the front left corner of the end zone. He hurdles over the wall, hangs onto the ball, and the Orlando Pirates get a walk-off touchdown at the buzzer for a second consecutive game at home. As the Pirates advance to 4-2, they outlast the Fishers Freight in every sense of the word. Final score there, 60-57. Another very high-scoring game where the Pirates, I mentioned them at plus 230 last week, they end up getting the job done, and obviously, as part of that territory, with the cover as well, to keep our record perfect at that point. Second game of the doubleheader, we headed out west to Prescott Valley. The San Antonio Gunslingers taking on the Northern Arizona Wranglers. This one promised to be pretty much a fist fight through and through, and that's precisely what we got. The Wranglers debuting a new starting quarterback this past week in Anthony Garrett, and Garrett proved to be a pretty powerful runner. Still some to be desired as a passer, but at the very least, he gave Northern Arizona's offense a little momentum, especially early on. The Wranglers actually led by 8 before the Gunslingers won on an unanswered 17-0 run before the Wranglers were able to get on the scoreboard again. I believe it was in the third quarter, the Wranglers got a touchdown to get themselves within 1, and then an uncharacteristic miss by Manny Higuera on the extra point kept Northern Arizona back a point. What we ended up getting was one of the most unusual sequences you'll see in a game this year. With about 20 plus minutes left in the game, we had only 3 possessions completed, and none of them resulted in points. The Gunslingers, went down the field, missed a field goal. The Wranglers got as close to the Gunslinger 1 yard line to try to get a go-ahead score. They end up going for it on fourth down on a drive lasting 10 minutes. They don't get it. And then the Gunslingers methodically work the length of the rest of the field, and they are able to run out the clock on a play that saw their running back slide at the 1 yard line to stomp out hope for anybody that had San Antonio at the -7.5. That close for the handicap bettors, but for us moneyline bettors, doesn't matter. The Gunslingers prevailing in a 1-point victory over the winless Northern Arizona Wranglers, 30-29. The win is the third in a row for San Antonio. And as we stated before, Northern Arizona still looking for that first win after 6 defeats to begin this season. We move forward now to Sunday's games, where the Tulsa Oilers began the day by taking on the Jacksonville Sharks in the Shark Tank down in Duval. And the Oilers, as the road team, they played a very solid first 30 minutes of ball. They scored on every one of their possessions. They held Jacksonville to a turnover on downs as well as a field goal over the course of those first 30 minutes. And it was the Oilers playing in one of those methodical tempo-esque games again. They led 24-12 at the half. But Jacksonville, they've been in this scenario before. They were down at halftime last week at home against New Mexico, and they made a charge in this game to make it another come-from-behind victory. The offense led by James Cahoon, Jimmy Robinson, and some spattering of Sammy Edwards there. They got touchdowns on all of their drives in the second half, while the Shark defense in turn forced a field goal as well as an empty possession. They eventually tie the game up by the time we get to about midway through the fourth quarter. The Sharks, later on, with about a minute left, get a touchdown from Edwards on the ground. Mark Orozco adding the extra point. And from there, the Oilers had to score a touchdown to at least extend the game, or perhaps think about going for two in an effort to steal the game on the road. They initially crossed the goal line on a 4th and goal play on a pass to Trip Harrington, but the play was called back by an offensive hold. So because there was no time left, there was a chance for an untimed down, but Tulsa, on a pass to the back of the end zone, had that one tipped away, incomplete. That sealed the ball game right there as the Jacksonville Sharks prevail in a comeback effort against the Oilers. Final score 41-34 to keep their winning streak alive and currently sitting at 4 games. Tulsa, meanwhile, dropping to a 2-4 record in what has been a season of missed opportunities for the Oilers, but certainly not out yet. Final game of the week saw the Tucson Sugar Skulls playing the Arizona Rattlers in a battle of Arizona. And if this was a battle in this instance, it was very, very one-sided. And that was with Arizona going with a surprise decision, starting Drew Powell. And in that 60-minute stretch, the 2022 league MVP found that form once again. Powell was lethal in this outing, consistently demolishing the Sugar Skulls defense, multiple touchdowns through the air, multiple touchdowns on the ground, over 250 total yards accounted for. And that Arizona defense, they came up with 3 interceptions, 8 empty possessions overall out of 10 for the Sugar Skulls, as Tucson, trying to figure some things out offensively, just simply put, had no answers in the snake pit. In what was the biggest blowout the league has seen in 3 years, the Arizona Rattlers assert their dominance with a 66-14 result, defeating Tucson, keeping the game under 87.5, and ending our season with a win to bring us back to an even record overall on the season. By far, this was our best result from a weekly standpoint of the season, with our 4 wins and 1 defeat. Super unfortunate we didn't get to 5-0 there, just because the Oilers-Sharks game only had 15 possessions. It's tough to make any over when your tempo and possession count gets throttled to that extent. But overall, we're doing very well with our spread betting, very well with our money line, and we're coming around a bit with our over-under betting. Remember, we were 3-10 here before. We've gone 3 out of our last 4, with all 3 of those wins coming in the under department, where we had started the season 0-4. So we're starting to see these matchups a lot better, and we're going to continue to maintain that same mindset moving forward as well. The other thing that we'd like to see turn around a little bit here is our play of the week mortal max record, which is currently on a 3-game losing streak. So what might we be able to do to improve upon that? So it's all about continuing that upward trend. And here we go. In all its glory and splendor, Fisher's Orlando over 96.5. San Antonio Naz under 75.5. Jacksonville covering at 4.5. Those 3 legs stand in immortality as the combination to end the 21-week parlay drought. We are finally on the board with a parlay win, our first of what we hope to be many throughout this 26 season. Now, I must concede, for those who saw my celebration out on social media, there were some things said, excitement kicked in. So if you saw that and you were at all repulsed by what you saw, I do sincerely apologize. It was very heat of the moment, very rare occurrence, one-time do. Something like that won't happen again. After all, we have now been there before, so now it's up to me to kind of act like it. But be that as it may, that parlay win knocked out nearly all of our net loss on the parlay count leading up to this point. Again, I think if we get to 4 parlay wins, regardless of what our finishing odds are for those attempts, we should come out on the positive here. So that would be a pretty fantastic result as well. All right, here's a look at each method's results so far in terms of net gain and loss. The flat method is now out to a fairly convincing lead after 3 straight mortal mega max defeats. And that just comes from the nature of having a total of $40 win versus only $30 win. So I envision these will kind of be tit for tat with one another as the season moves along. But again, it shows how the level of confidence in some bets over others can influence the end result, both positive and negative. But ever since we've made that $20 bet at least once a requirement, we're now seeing a more definitive disparity in what that looks like, which was my goal entering this year. All right, so let's look at the population of games so far. And for the bookmakers, it has been an absolute dream in terms of evaluating favorites and underdogs on the spread. Dead even there, both sides covering 23 times. The overs and unders in games, same deal. Exactly 23 apiece. The definitive advantage of this season, though, still lies with home teams. Whether you're betting them outright or you're betting on them on the handicap, whichever piece that you're looking at there, if you take a random game from that population so far, there's about a 70% chance that that home team won and or covered. So that is definitely something that we'll want to be leaning into more as the season moves along. The favorites and underdogs on the money line are right about expected. If anything, favorites are converting at a little bit higher of a clip, resulting in a small ROI for those who have bet exclusively favorites on the money line so far this season. But as far as that over-under front with those point totals, we had set 86.5, 87.5 as that threshold for comparison before. And when we first did this, these differences were a lot more in magnitude. 86.5 or less was around like 66, 67%. Under 87.5s, we're covering at about 35, 36%. But now we've seen that narrow. So what exactly does this tell us here? It tells us that maybe looking at the numbers, at least right now, is not the most ideal way to view it. What we have found as a way that's worked so far before is by looking at these teams' offensive efficiencies and their respective matchups. So we've really found something on that front And before we move on to team results, a little bit of a fun fact about this past week. Underdogs went perfect against the spread. All 5 for a 5-0 record. If you were to parlay each one of those, you would have turned a $10 bet into somewhere around the $250 neighborhood. So something to consider if you want to bet on the first 5 games of this season and see if you can combine them in something with a near 25-1 payout. But again, it goes back to that whole idea. When you're converting a bet type at near 70%, that ROI is going to skyrocket. So is that our definitive gold mine moving forward? There's every reason to believe that it absolutely could be. All right, here are our team-by-team results so far. As you can see, we have a couple significant results on the spread. Tucson with 3 straight failures to cover the spread with a league worst 2-5 ATS record. Meanwhile, the Nighthawks on the opposite end, 5-1 against the spread. They've covered in each of their last 5 and 11 of their last 12 dating back to last season. Without question, the class of the IFL when it comes to that bet type right now. For those looking at the over-under, the Orlando Pirates overs have been right there every single time so far this season. 6 overs out of 6 opportunities. Their games have averaged 109 points per game. How sustainable that is? Probably not, but it's there for the taking. And on the opposite end, San Antonio's games have gone 1-5 to the over, or 5-1 to the under, if you look at it that way, as their games have averaged a very meager 63.5 per outing. So if you look at the Gunslingers and the Pirates, that's near 7 touchdowns difference on a per game basis, which is just wild to think about. Obviously, we have a lot more violent swings, you could say, on the money line. Some more statistically significant results there. I'm most interested, though, in the ROI percentage of each of these teams on the money line so far. The leaders are Green Bay at 46.3%, Orlando not too far behind at 45.5%, and rounding out the podium is the Jacksonville Sharks at a very respectable 25% ROI. So something to look towards if you're betting the money line on teams that have either done their job or not done their job at all at respecting your coin. Here are our results by team so far. We've gotten quite a few teams up here to 5 wins, actually, with Arizona, San Antonio, Green Bay, and Quad City already there. The teams that we will want to focus on, though, especially if we look at it from the lens of our 7 win per team goal, we've got New Mexico, we've got Fishers, and we've got Jacksonville that we've got to turn around quickly here. And wouldn't you know it, the Freight and the Sharks go toe-to-toe with each other this week. So an opportunity for us to hit 2 targets with the same arrow. So we're also looking to maybe take advantage of a Tulsa Oilers spread bet, which is something that we have not yet done this season. Is this the week that we do it? Stick around to find out. All righty, disclaimers time for the week. The lines and odds today that we're going to be using are going to come from DraftKings Sportsbook. This is a series purely rooted in entertainment, curiosity, and above all else, a lot of fun. It's not meant to be taken as betting advice or a tool with which to make money. After all, there's no such thing as a guarantee or a lock in the sports wagering world. So bear that in mind. If you would like to play, please do so responsibly and legally. You must be at least 21 years of age to play or older to play in most jurisdictions. If you would like to tail my selections or fade them, if you have maybe some disbelief in me, you're more than welcome to do so, but please practice safe gaming habits if you do. That includes setting a budget in terms of both your finances and your time. Risk only what you can afford to lose. And if you feel like you or a loved one is having an issue or maybe teetering on problem gaming, there are a lot of resources online and issued by your respective state that provide assistance and resources to help with that. Responsibleplay.org is one example. Haveagameplan.org is another. And there are great resources that help debunk gambling myths and refer you to wherever you need to go to treat whatever addiction or near addiction you may be having. So if you feel like you're in that boat, know that you are not alone and you have support available to you. All right, there it is. Our 7-game big board, including the IFL Cup Showcase in East Rutherford, New Jersey, over at American Dream. With that having been said, it is time to get the big board actually rolling here. So give me just one moment to get that up here. And lovely, there we go. So we will begin things with our opening game of the week. That is tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Eastern. Non-conference game between the Tucson Sugar Skulls and the Quad City Steam Whalers. This is the first matchup between these two franchises since before the COVID era. You got to go back to 2019, the last time these two teams played. In this outing, Quad City is favored by 9.5. The over-under is 82 in the hook. On the money line, Tucson is plus 250 and Quad City at minus 310. Both of these teams are mired in multi-game losing streaks right now of at least 3 games apiece. In the case of the Sugar Skulls, they have suddenly found their going in the season very rough amidst inconsistency at the quarterback position. They had started out with Draylon Ellis, who flashed some brilliance in the first couple games, kind of fell apart with some turnover-prone play later in the season. Tucson eventually gives way to Casey Otto. He only lasts a game and a half. The Skulls go Taz Wilson as a free agent signing. He's been unable to move the offense as much as they would like. And the end result is the past 3 games, that Sugar Skulls offense has been held under 20 points as a unit in each one of those games. So for the Sugar Skulls, their top priority entering this one is getting back to what they've done well throughout the past few years, which is running the football. I know that Brandon Mackey has been injured and not available for the Sugar Skulls, which is certainly a massive loss, but Tavion Thomas is no slouch either. And there's got to be a creative way that you can get your receivers in motion on the jet sweep taking handoffs as well. Whether you look the way of Javian Lofton or D'Amico Ewing, that's going to be a pretty decent challenge for Coach Rayshon Kaiser to figure out, how do we get the best out of the offense as a whole while trying to alleviate the pressure at that quarterback spot that has killed us so far. So that's going to be the primary question for Tucson to answer. Defensively, obviously, they got slashed last week against Arizona, but that was just a byproduct of being overworked and getting absolutely no run support from their offense. It's still a very respectable unit. Twardowski, Brian Murray, those other guys in the secondary have done pretty solid throughout the season as well, as Tucson is right about a league average, a little bit above league average actually, in keeping points off the scoreboard on their end. In the case of Quad City, each of their past 3 losses amidst their 4-game losing streak, I believe it is, has been the turnover bug. They have given up the ball multiple times in each of their last 3 losses. That is something that Coach Corey Ross is definitely hoping gets cleaned up with a decent opportunity in this matchup here. Whether it's been the interception by Daquan Neal or the uncharacteristic fumble by one of the skill position players, the Steam Wheelers have to find a way to be able to consistently get production out of their guys. Kevin Rudd, outstanding game last week against Green Bay. Do they get him involved more in the offense as that 1B to Keon Williams 1A? So we're going to have to see how the offense responds in terms of kind of cleaning things up a little bit in that regard. As far as the Quad City defense, they've had some rough games, but they've stayed otherwise healthy throughout the majority of this season. Guys like Keyshawn Moore, Trey Smith, Clay Harrell have all been present and accounted for, each coming up with their fair share of plays. Chimmy Dunga along that defensive line as well. So this is going to be a very interesting game. And given where both teams are not playing their best, it's very hard to get a read on either the spread bet or the total. It's a very weird spot where if you look at that spread, is 9.5 too many points to lay if you're the Steamwheelers? If you're Tucson, is 9.5 points enough to weather any sort of offensive struggles that you might continue to have? So there's a whole myriad of ways those could go throughout this game. So I know in these 7-game slates, I usually put together one punt play just to say, okay, I'm not sure what to do here. Let's take a bet that I'm confident in gets it through the hoop. For me, that pick is going to be Quad City minus 310. Apologies in advance to anybody who got excited with the misclick at Tucson plus 250 there. Ultimately, you look at the Steamwheelers, you look at their team identity. This team just has an entirely different gear when they are at home versus when they're tasked to play road games. Each of their past 2 games have been on the road, 3 of their last 4 as well. The one home game mixed in the middle of that stretch was that 1-point loss against the Jacksonville Sharks, where they were a 4th down stop from potentially stealing that game away. So I feel Quad City is the better team right now. They still have that benefit of the doubt on paper. This team should be running circles around Tucson. And it's one of those situations where it's like, even if Quad City is 4-4, or maybe even 5-3, we probably see this closer to like a 12.5 or 13.5 spread. But right now, both teams are in prove-it scenarios. So let's go with the home team, which, league-wide and for Quad City specifically, historically, they've been pretty good. My final score prediction here is Quad City 45 and Tucson 32. So we'll see how close I am on that selection. All right, next game. We have 3 on Saturday, starting with a 5 o'clock Western Conference tilt. This is between the San Diego Strike Force and the San Antonio Gunslingers. At home, San Antonio is favored by 1.5. The over-under is 81 in the hook. On the money line, San Diego is plus 110 and San Antonio minus 130. This is a great, great game, especially when you're looking at the Western Conference standings as they currently sit. San Antonio, with a win, would jump into 3rd place in the conference if they are able to take down the Strike Force, who are currently in that position entering this game. San Diego obviously trying to live up to their name as Western Conference favorites, along with Arizona and Vegas. So they can ill afford to drop games in the standings if they want any shot of sticking around at home for perhaps the first round of the playoffs. The Strike Force offense is well rested, and we know the upside that they have with that offense, with Nate Davis, Eddie Vander, Shane Hooks, Dallas Daniels, as we've seen this team put up 73 points in a game before. The matchup is obviously very, very tough here against the San Antonio defense, which we will get to in a little bit. But the extra week off as rest as well is going to help the defense out quite a bit, with Roy C. still manning that linebacker spot, Elijah Reed in the secondary. San Diego right now, they are very much still a very well-rounded team, certainly in the mix to make some noise later in the season. For San Antonio, this game, if they win, would go a long way into establishing themselves as legitimate playoff contenders. Offensively throughout the season, it's been a struggle. San Antonio is 3rd to last in points scored per game, just under 31 per. But they have found a little bit of life with Fred Payton Jr. at that quarterback spot. Give him any open space, it seems, and he will take it on the ground for 20, 25 yards, maybe break the goal line on you in the process. Deion Cook, Austin Upshaw, a couple of their really good receivers as well, along with Deion McShane, another shifty big play specialist. And for the Gunslingers, this is going to be a fantastic test for them on the defense. Their past few games, they've gone up against Northern Arizona twice, and they've gone up against Tucson. Not exactly the brightest offenses in the league to kind of flex your muscle on. So against this San Diego offense, we're going to see the true colors of San Antonio, at least in that 60-game sample. My prediction for this game is going to once again entrust San Diego as a road team. They've done very well in this spot historically this season. Unfortunately, we have yet to capitalize on it. But I say third time's the charm. And I say San Diego at plus a dime represents very, very solid value. This San Diego team, if you look at their roster through and through, for the most part, they've stuck together for basically the past few years. They know what it takes to win close games like this. San Antonio, sure, they have some veteran presence laced around the roster, but this is largely their first time playing together. This is going to be very much a playoff-esque environment at Freeman Coliseum, but I feel like we got to take a gamble on a plus money proposition somewhere. Tough to do worse at San Diego at plus the dime. So that will be my pick for this game. I fully expect it to be a close one, wire to wire. Okay, moving on to the 7 o'clock game on Saturday, the second of the 3 games to kick off on the evening. The Jacksonville Sharks and the Fishers Freight, a battle between 2 top 4 teams in the Eastern Conference, 2 top 3 offenses as well. The spread favors Fishers at home by 4.5. The over-under at 87 in the hook. On the money line, the Sharks are plus 142 and Fishers at minus 170. For those who love offense, this game very well may be for you. On the Jacksonville side, you've got James Cahoon, one of the best pure passers in the game. Jimmy Robinson, one of the best dual threat rushing and receiving type of guys in the league. Receiving, you got Red Douglas, Jaden Stoshak. Who's the other guy that they have? Marquel Wade. Just an outstanding receiving core that they can also rotate a few other of their pieces around to keep them fresh throughout a 60-minute sample, a 16-game season. And Jacksonville was not afraid to attack teams downfield either. So they are going to try to drive the tempo, drive you into shootouts that you don't necessarily want to take part in. And the defense on the other side holding their end of the bargain as one of the top 4, top 5 units in the league in points allowed per game. They are also top 4 in points allowed per 10 possessions as far as looking at efficiency from that lens. So Jacksonville, outstanding team, actually a double-digit plus in per 10 possession efficiency, one of just 3 teams to have that trait. The second of those 3 teams happens to be the Fishers Freight, who are a little bit unfortunate to be just 5-3 so far on the season. They've had some pretty close losses, but when they've had their wins, they've usually been in very convincing fashion. With Felix Harper, Dominic Roberto, and Josiah King forming a 3-headed monster, rushing all over teams. They've combined for 50 points per 10 possessions, over that clip actually, as very few teams have been able to stop the locomotive. The defense, they've been a little bit leaky the past couple games, which you could argue might be a source for their past 2 losses, but overall on the season, not too shabby. I believe 5th or 6th in point scoring allowed per game, while also remaining top 5 in defensive scoring efficiency right around the 41 point per 10 possession mark. So extreme talent on this Fishers roster. That's not even to mention the defensive side. Leon Smalls, Monty Montgomery, Jaden Rowe having an outstanding season, well on his way to first team All IFL honors if he keeps his current form going. So this matchup is going to be all sorts of fun. I love the offensive upside of both these teams. And whereas the Jacksonville over kind of shot us in the foot last week, I find every reason to go back to it and take the over at 87.5. I don't think when you look at that Jacksonville game against Tulsa last week, we're not going to get another game that's just 15 possessions. I feel like this is a perfect matchup where the contrasting styles of offenses could definitely drive the pace of the game upwards. And given where both teams are over 50 points per 10 possessions right now, even if we get a little below average on each team's overall efficiency, maybe the defenses kind of shine a little bit here and there as well, we're still going to need a pretty outstanding defensive effort by both teams by the metrics in order to put this one under really much of any threat. My final score for this one, I have Fishers emerging with the win, 48-44 as the final score there. Just realizing as well that I forgot to mention a correct score prediction for San Diego and San Antonio, for which I'm predicting the Strike Force come out with a 43-36 victory at Alamo Town. So pivoting back to this Jacksonville Fishers game, it's going to have a massive effect on the standings. The two teams will actually rematch in 2 weeks' time over in Duval. So expect a lot of animosity to rise up in this one, and we'll see how much of it carries over into the rematch in just 14 or 15 days or whenever it is. So this game at Fishers Event Center, give me the over, 87.5. All right, nearly halfway through the games of the week. We go now to the final game of Saturday. 8 o'clock kickoff. This one is on overnight. The Green Bay Blizzard look to keep that win streak going against the Tulsa Oilers. At home, the Oilers are underdogs. They're getting 4.5. The over-under at 90 in the hook. On the money line, Green Bay's minus 170 and Tulsa plus 142. What a matchup this is going to be. And in my mind, it is the perfect environment for Green Bay to try to keep up their current form. They have won each of their last 4 games, and in that stretch, they have not scored fewer than 55 points along any of those 4 games, all wins. Liam Thompson easily leading the league right now in terms of nominations for Offensive Player of the Week. He's looking to keep that offense going strong while featuring DeMylan Brown, Drayshawn Hudson, Trayvon Alexander, and Terrell Carey. Each of those guys having outstanding years on an offense that you could argue is the best in the IFL right now. Pair that with the defense that has been opportunistic and ball hawking, especially in their past few wins. Some of their key players, Tavon Grant. They've also got Frankie West Jr. having a great sophomore season in that secondary as one of many former Bay Area Panthers to join Green Bay for this season. So you look up and down that roster and you look at their track records, at least for this season, not hard to see why they're 7-1 right now. And for the Tulsa Oilers, it's going to be a stiff challenge to avoid falling to a 2-5 record. The one silver lining in their 2-4 record is that their losses have all been by one possession. Basically, one play in any of those games, we could be looking at a 4-2 team. We could be looking at a 5-1 team. But the Oilers so far have just had trouble closing out those games where victory was essentially right in front of them. But another thing that they have going, the offense with TJ Edwards, putting together perhaps the best season of his career as a passer. And with each successive game, he's getting those feet underneath him as well. He had that outstanding touchdown run. I believe it was a couple weeks ago back at home when the Oilers hosted the Fisher's Freight, I believe it was. So the 2023 MVP getting pretty darn close back to that form if he's not already scratching the surface of it already. The new running back that they got, the rookie Caleb Ramseur, seems like he could be an answer to Tulsa's need at running back. To pair that with guys like Jermaine Smith, Spencer Tiers, and Mike Kerrigan at the receiver position. Defensively, Ulrich Jones is back with the team. You pair him on a roster that's also got Trey Harvey, Sedarius Stoss. And this Oiler defense, like we said before, they're going to be tested, but they're going to have that rowdy crowd of 10,000 plus rallying them, cheering for them, supporting them every step of the way as they try to put a rare freeze on this Green Bay Blizzard team, which, by the way, they were able to do in last season's meeting in this building. One of just 6 losses in the regular season that Green Bay had last year came at Box Center against the Oilers. So, what is my play for this contest? Well, I mentioned before how we hadn't placed a bet on a Tulsa game on the spread entering this week. And I was a little bit back and forth on this one, whether to go with that or the point total. I let the intrusive thoughts win, and I am going with the Tulsa Oilers to cover at that 4.5 number. This borrows a little bit from the off-the-wall school of thought, where if TJ Edwards is given points, take TJ Edwards' team and ride that offensive upside. At the end of the day, if we get a situation where Edwards is leading touchdown drive after touchdown drive, at very worst, you have to imagine a scenario where this basically comes down to a field goal either way, whether it's off the foot of Andrew Mevis, or Bailey Hale from the Tulsa Oilers. We're just looking for a close game here, and I firmly believe that Tulsa has the chops to outright win this game. If you're a believer in teams are due for a letdown game, this could be one of those spots where it might be tough to place a finger on exactly why, whether it's Green Bay going on the road or how sustainable is their 62 point per game in their last 4 games form. But yeah, I just like the home team and the home underdog in this spot. We saw it in our slides earlier. Home underdogs so far this season, 14-5 against the spread, close to 75% efficiency. And given where we've seen Tulsa in games go toe-to-toe with Orlando, toe-to-toe with Arizona, even toe-to-toe with the Fisher's Freight in their close 40-38 loss a few weeks back, I do like this bet a lot, even though we are fading Green Bay's spectacular form so far. So, once again, home dog on Tulsa to cover. All right, we are now on to Sunday. We have a standalone contest, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, between the two teams with the worst record in the league as it currently stands. The Iowa Barnstormers traveling to Prescott Valley for their first ever battle with the Northern Arizona Wranglers. The Wranglers are a winless 0-6, whereas Iowa is 1-5, but it's actually the winless team that's the favorite here by 4.5 points. The over-under is 80.5. Iowa's at plus 142 on the money line, and Northern Arizona minus 170. The fascinating thing about both teams in this one is that neither team's starting quarterback started the season on the Week 1 roster. That's right. We have Dante Avila Santos winning the quarterback job for Andre Coles in the Iowa Barnstormers. Avila Santos turning that first career start into his first IFL win 2 weeks ago as the Barnstormers defeated Quad City by a score of 35-25 in Des Moines. And on the flip side, we had Anthony Garrett make his IFL debut for Northern Arizona against the San Antonio Gunslingers. And Garrett was pretty impressive, notably as a rusher, in scoring 29 points against a vaunted San Antonio defense. So Coach Ron James is hoping Garrett can maybe develop his skills more as a passer in what should be a much more favorable matchup on paper defensively. Yes, Iowa did have that outstanding second half in their win 2 weeks ago, but in total on the season, they're still giving up points at a bottom 3 clip in the league. Roughly 45, 46 point per game, I believe the result was entering this one. So maybe the playoffs are slightly out of reach here for both teams, but this is as good an opportunity as it gets for either team to get a win, to boost that confidence. The question becomes, who is able to do it? My main pick for this game will not answer that question directly, but it will ride some season-long trends that both teams have had so far this season. And I am going to go with the under on the week's most deflated point total of the 7-game slate. This, again, boils down to two teams that are pretty much in brand new offensive schemes as far as who's behind center taking the snaps. Iowa's had a little bit of an extra charge in them offensively, particularly with the signing of running back David Elder, who might get an extra boost in this game as a hashtag revenge game possibility against the same Northern Arizona team with which he suited up for the better parts of the past few seasons. So a bit of a reunion for him in Prescott Valley. While for the Wranglers, they'll try to establish guys like Nolan Sussel, Kobe Smith, and Karan Ashley to try to get momentum moving forward further for that offense as well. But at the end of the day, these are two teams that are averaging right around 30-ish points per 10 possessions. And where both defenses have shown some respectable form, especially as of late, this could very well be a rather grimy game. The other big thing that I noticed as well when I was looking through my data, Northern Arizona games against the Eastern Conference since 2023, perfect 6-0 to the under. So that is active on this game. We're going to give this a shot at under 80.5. Correct score prediction for this one, I have Northern Arizona taking it by a score of 40-34. And again, I forgot my final score prediction in Green Bay, Tulsa. I have that one finishing with the Blizzard winning 50-47. So again, trying to make it a little bit more of a habit to spit out a final score prediction there, see if it sticks for each of these games. So we have 5 main game picks and 5 final score predictions to this point. That is Sunday's standalone game. Let's move to New Jersey for the IFL Cup. We start with a Monday afternoon game. So a lot of us are going to be on company time at that point. But at 1 o'clock Eastern, at least listed here, Arizona and New Mexico will get the mini tournament underway with the Rattlers at 14.5-point favorites, the over-under at 84.5. On the money line, Arizona's minus 550 and New Mexico plus 410. For Arizona, this is another opportunity to beat up on a team that's currently at the bottom of the conference right now. There is some rumblings of a quarterback controversy between Drew Powell and Max Myler from what I've heard, although regardless of who is at quarterback in a given game, Arizona is going to remain a top 5 team offensively nonetheless. They're actually right at 5th right now as one of 5 teams in the league averaging 50 per game, as they can beat you through the rush with Ron Brown, Powell, Myler, whoever's taken the rushing attempts. Their receiving group has made some big plays too, Arlen Bruce IV and Corey Reed. The first guys coming to mind in that aspect. While the defense has been outstanding, they've got veteran presence back there with Malik Fleming, but they've also had some youngsters come up with some interceptions too, among the league leaders, as a matter of fact. Yashin McKee Sr. as well as Karlvansky Decius. So the Rattlers continue to churn out talent both sides of the ball, putting together a complete product. And that's going to go up against a New Mexico team that is going to be trying to string things together on the fly. I've had it from multiple reputable sources that Jerome Johnson is out. He has been traded away from New Mexico, so somebody else is going to be taking the snaps at quarterback for the Chupacabra offense. Whether that's incumbent Donovan Portery or newcomer Harry Rubidoux remains to be seen. That's going to be a battle that Coach Kyle Moore Brown is going to have to sort out as he makes his return home to the New York, New Jersey metro area. Chupacabra offense, as we said before, they've got some things to figure out, but they've got James White at running back, Damon Street and CJ Jefferson at receiver, so no shortage of proven guys there that have made plays on occasion throughout the season. The defense getting Wesley Bowers back from injured reserve also very, very helpful. Guys like Gleason Spreewell in the secondary, Maurice Jackson along the defensive line. So the Chupacabras are going to try to continue to build, get some more rising stars emerge as they look to kind of put the page behind them in terms of their 1-5 record to begin their inaugural season. My prediction for this game, you got to go with the side that has most of everything figured out at this point. I like Arizona at this minus 14.5 number. These are very scary to wager on, especially where a hot start by the Chupacabras immediately puts this in immediate peril. And you never know if there's going to be like a fumbled kickoff or an early turnover or some sort of mishap that gets the Chupacabras out to an early lead, but it is very realistic that that scenario could play out. But how can you not be impressed with the way that Arizona put together a complete game last week? They did not mess around. They kept throwing punches at Tucson even when they were fully down on the mat. And you know that Arizona is going to want to win this game to set up what could be a rematch with the Vegas Nighthawks next week, depending on how the results of these couple games shake out. So I've got my final score prediction in this one as Arizona 51 and New Mexico 28. I would certainly be impressed if the Chupacabras are able to keep this at a single-digit margin. But their only win so far has been against the Wranglers. They've lost a couple against the Tucson Sugar Skulls. It's probably going to be very tough to compete in this environment, especially where Arizona's fans travel very, very well. So that's going to be a great game. That'll be the first of Monday's doubleheader. And we will follow that up with the second game at 7 p.m. Eastern between the reigning champion Vegas Nighthawks and the 4-2 Orlando Pirates. The Vegas Nighthawks are favored by 14.5. The over-under is 99.5, the largest mark of any game this season. On the money line, it's the same as the game above. Vegas is minus 550, and Orlando is plus 410. We'll talk about Vegas a little bit first here. We didn't get a chance to see them last week because they were on bye. So their prime players like Jaden DeLaura, Josh Tomas, Quentin Randolph on offense, along with Lorenzo Hernandez on defense. On a defense that gets Joe Fouché in the mold as well, the reigning 2025 Defensive Player of the Year, joining forces with Vegas as well. What you have here is Vegas leading the league at 53.2 points per game while sporting a top 3 defensive efficiency, giving up just under 39 points per 10 possessions. The Nighthawks have covered in 11 of their last 12 ball games. They are arguably the class of the league right now in every way, shape, and form imaginable. But I will say, if there is one team that can say they are rivaling Vegas right now from the offensive efficiency front. It is the Orlando Pirates, who are actually dead tied with the Nighthawks in offensive points scored through the first 6 weeks of the season. They are averaging 53.2 per game as well, as Paxton DeLorean has taken that Orlando offense to an incredibly high level. The unit also features Puka Williams, along with an insane receiving trio of Thomas Owens, Naquan Murray, and Teo Redding, where you can't double cover any one of those guys without leaving somebody else open for a potentially big play. So that offense under head coach Rod Windsor is absolutely blazing right now. Where the Pirates stand to be improving the most is a defense that has uncharacteristically given up a large amount of points. In fact, the most points per game allowed in the IFL this season. So that is going to be, again, put to the test against another explosive offense, not too dissimilar from the one that they played against and defeated a week ago against the Fisher's Freight. So Vegas and Orlando in a neutral environment. What is the play? I automatically go to the spread here. And if you're giving a team any amount of points that is among the top 3 most efficient offenses in the IFL, you almost have to take it. In my opinion, this is just too many points to be giving Orlando's offense, regardless of what their defensive status is like. And to be honest, it really can't be much worse than it currently is. All you're asking Orlando to do is basically trade touchdown for touchdown with the Nighthawks. And if you get even 1 or 2 defensive stands in that mix, even if it means limiting to field goal attempts, you're going to have a pretty solid shot at not only covering, but perhaps outright winning as well. This is also the first time in the IFL's betting era that the Pirates have been double-digit underdogs. So the games that they have been the underdogs, they've actually outright won in nearly half of them. So the Pirates as a franchise just have a way of finding that extra gear when the bookmakers and the analysts might not have that full belief in them at the time of a particular matchup. So Orlando plus 14.5 is my play. Final score prediction there, Vegas 58, Orlando 48. Again, we're just looking for the Pirates to stay stride and stride with the Nighthawks, which to this point, by the numbers, they have done to quite literal a perfect T. Okie doke. We will close out the evening with our bid for the back-to-back. That's right, 3 legs to try to make it 2 in a row for the first time in Wager Wednesday's 4-year history. We will begin things with the aforementioned Green Bay and Tulsa game, where I am going to be taking the over at 90.5. This is a testament to the way that both offenses are playing, particularly in recent form. Green Bay, like we said before, their 4-game winning streak has seen them score 62 points per game. And while we can't reasonably bank on 62 points in every single matchup, much less one on the road against a potentially stingy defense as the Oilers, you've got to like Tulsa's offense too, like we said with TJ Edwards earlier. Of Tulsa's 6 games so far this season, they have crossed the 50-point threshold in half of those games, so 3. So again, this one is about banking both teams' offensive ceilings and seeing if we get a little bit of regression to the mean, to be honest, with regards to the way that Tulsa's games have played out as far as possession count. They've been very, very low compared to the league average. I fully expect if we get, 10 possessions apiece, we should sit around 93 points on an average run. So again, we kind of have to trust tempo being there, but I love both offenses to where this over 90.5 has a solid chance of getting this thing underway. Moving on to Sunday's game, the pick that I am going to make here the outright Northern Arizona win for the first time this season. On top of viewing Northern Arizona as a bit better team by the numbers, particularly on defense, this Iowa team has not been good on the road for nearly 2 years now. In fact, they've lost 13 straight outside of Des Moines, a span in which they've gone just 3-10 against the spread. That includes ATS losses in each of their last 7 road games. So that is another streak that is active with this selection here. We could go with the -4.5 as well, which I do believe holds true. But in our parlay, why risk the margin of victory? Let's drop this down to -170 on the home team, which again has been spectacular league-wide this season. So we'll go Northern Arizona -170. My third leg was tough to decide, but ultimately the choice that I made was the under in the Arizona-New Mexico game. The Chupacabra offense, as we've said before, they've had it rough this season. And you look at their first 6 games, that even accounts for Jerome Johnson more often than not pulling the rabbit out of his hat on particular plays, either keeping drives alive or miraculously finding ways to score touchdowns. The Chupacabras no longer have that, having traded away the 2024 IFL MVP. So your alternatives are either a guy in Donovan Portery with limited playing experience or a similar novice in Harry Rubidoux, whose single game high for a game in his short time with the Iowa Barnstormers was 39 points. This just looks like another game, again, where Arizona's defense could potentially feast. We do have to worry a little bit about Arizona exploding for 60+, which they proved last game they can very easily do. But I feel like as this game goes on, if it gets further and further out of hand, both teams will understand, listen, this outcome is not going to change. We're back here next weekend. Let's keep everybody as healthy as possible for the next one. So those are my picks there. 3 legs for a potential payout of +478. $10 on that gets you a $57.88 payout. For those of you looking to tail in our quest for a repeat, we'll start things off with over 90.5 in Green Bay at Tulsa. Northern Arizona to win at home against the Iowa Barnstormers. And Arizona, New Mexico to keep the inaugural IFL Cup game beneath that 12-touchdown, 84.5 number for +478. Will the repeat occur? All righty, so that is going to do it for me tonight from this beautiful Supercharged Entertainment Complex. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. If you are going to be placing wagers this week in the IFL, I wish you the very best. And as always, I will see you at the cashier. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Friday's Tucson and Quad City Tilt.